What's up, hooligans? It is Thursday. We are inside again because it is
Cold.
It's
Back
cold
to
and,
cold.
and raining outside. So, we decided to film inside once more. And today's topic is a very touchy subject, but we wanted to tackle it because we like asking these hard questions and having discussions. You know, so.
What was your name again?
Oh, I'm Jay Hooligan.
And this is Hooligan B.
Yeah. Yes. So this is this is our live lunch. Thank you for joining us on this. And again, today's topic is a little bit of a very. It's not a little bit. It is a very touchy subject, and we wanted to tackle it from from our perspective, just to give it. And again, just to give fair warning. This is just our opinion. You're gonna have your own opinions about it. You're gonna have your own experiences about it. So wait, that's you good there? You're gonna have your own, experiences and your own opinions about it. This is no way to make anybody feel discriminative or discriminated against. I'm definitely all about equality for every single person that's out there, and taking it from a perspective of practicality. So let's just jump right into this whole idea of racism in film. And what I wanted to start with is this term right here, equity. Okay, so equity versus equality. We'll go over some of this too, but equity is a more recent term that is being thrown around all over the place. And right from here, it just means the equality of being fair and impartial. So that's fantastic. Yeah, that's how it should be, right? Being fair and impartial. All right. Equality, on the other hand, is the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Now, a lot of people like to use that, and I know there's people that use them synonymously. And what's interesting is you won't find equality or equity as terms to mean synonymously each other, even though they're very, very closely related.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it is pretty interesting to see how they do it. Now, I found this one site. Where is it? This one site here: equity versus equality and other racial justice definitions. And I brought this one up because it does kind of show a little bit of where it gets a little bit twisted. Okay, and we'll go back to it. So off here it says, often race-focused conversations derail because people are using the same terms in different ways. One of the challenges of communicating effectively about race is to move people from the narrow and individualized definition of racism to a more comprehensive and systemic awareness. So I'm all for that. Connotative versus denotative. However, it's where does it say? The narrow and individualized definition of racism. So I'm not sure if they're trying to say the connotative definition that people equate to it, because that's not the definitive definition, the denotative definition for it. So it's a little bit already not clear what they're trying to talk about, like the narrow and individualized definition of racism. I can't tell what that they're actually trying to say on that. So to move people from to a more comprehensive and systemic awareness. So if they're trying to add more connotative meaning to it, then they're already in the wrong. Okay, that just muddles up the conversation. That means that every single person that has some sort of attachment to a word can mean something different.
They're trying to add connotative?
Yeah.
Connotative is when you're...
It's associated ideas that are attached to a definition. So, for example, when someone says, "Oh man, I hate mint chocolate chip ice cream," all right, they may not actually hate it in terms of hate. It's more the connotative meaning of it's something that I dislike, or that's a very simplistic example. And yeah. So anyway, it's just the associated things, the associated meanings behind things that people have attached over time. One great example of how connotative meanings can override denotative meanings is the swastika. The swastika, even though it's flip-flopped, was actually an Eastern symbol that meant peace. Okay, they adopted it and flipped it, and then now everybody that sees it, even in the older versions of it, just believes it's a swastika. It means Nazi. Period. That's it.
But doesn't that mean like society changes the word?
It did, and to be fair,
Society
they
can
did.
change words?
They did, yes, and to be
Or
fair,
symbols?
again, yeah, and to be fair, they did adopt the symbol for that, and that's what is represented from that because that's what they adopted for that. Okay, anyway, so going back to this, to eliminate racism, we need to name it, frame it, and explain it, which I agree with. Establishing a shared language to present data, describe conditions and outcomes, and identify root causes of inequities serves an important function. A common language creates a narrative that makes it easier to communicate the commitment to racial equity, both internally and externally, and it creates a platform for coordinated work toward equitable outcomes. Okay, so this is, again, what was equity? Again, state of being fair and impartial. So, tracking on all this. Okay. All right. The following are definitions. Okay. This they're definitions of concepts. So, equity is defined as the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. Okay. So, pretty spot on that. The concept of equity is synonymous with fairness and justice. It is helpful to think of equity as not simply a desired state of affairs or a lofty value. To be achieved and sustained, equity needs to be thought of as a structural and systemic concept. Absolutely. That's why we have a justice system. That's what the justice system is supposed to do, and is why it was set up the way it was. And then when you get people, that are messing with the laws, Congress, right? What?
Right. Well, I was just about to ask you. I was like, well, who's gonna check the government or justice system, right?
Okay, so that is
they check.
Yeah, I mean the justice system is supposed to be part of the checks and balances of how our government is set up, which is why we have 3 branches, for it. You have your legislative branch, which is supposed to be representative of the people, and then you have the House that makes the laws, and then all these other checks and balances that are for it. So our government is complex to ensure that no one person or party, problem there, yeah, becomes more powerful than the rest. Otherwise, it becomes inequitable. That is a fact. It is no longer fair when you have stacked the deck for it with your people and nobody else. Or you want to, again, systemically erase a certain people out of the system.
And all that you fight for is just lost.
That is not the state or quality of being just, impartial, and fair at all. And again, then this is not to justify how the other party is not doing, horrible things. It's across the board. It must, if you want to have that, it has to be across the board. Anyway,
it has to be everybody, not just one.
Absolutely, yes. So equity versus equality. So equity involves trying to understand and give people what they need to enjoy full, healthy lives. I don't agree with that, to give people stuff like that so they can enjoy it. Okay, equality in contrast, and this is already muddling up the conversation. In contrast, it's not in contrast, but aims to ensure that everyone gets the same things in order to enjoy full, healthy lives. Again, it's not about getting the same.
Is it on the other hand?
It wouldn't be like on the other hand for one.
Wording
and
as well.
Getting things in what sense? Okay, this is where I don't like this. The latter half of this section here is what I have a problem with. Like equity, equality aims to promote fairness and justice. Okay, which if you actually look at the synonyms on these, it's got fairness, justice, for equity. And equality, fairness, justice, impartiality. I think there was one, I saw it somewhere, equitability. It actually does have it in there as a synonym for it, but they don't actually use equity or equality as synonyms. But still, they use a lot of the same synonyms. So there is a huge overlap. All right? Okay. Where was I? So like equity, equality aims to promote fairness and justice, but it can only work if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same things. That right there, that is the twist, the horrible, perverted twist of how all of this woke culture is pushing, all the social justice warriors are pushing to actually make it unequal. and unequitable. That right there. But it can only work if everyone starts the same place and needs the same things. That's bull.
What's that type of society?
Communist? Yeah, that's communism. No, you can still have equitable and equity and equality where people do not have start on the same as equality. It's status, rights, and opportunities. So the problem with this definition with equality is status. Status in what sense? Status as in pay, status as in your rights or opportunities that you get. That's a really tough one to delve into. Okay, but think the way that a lot of people like to see it is, well, I've started out at the bottom. I don't have the same opportunities. I don't have the same status, so I need to be given things to equal a certain status.
It's funny. It just reminded me of a memory that my mom used to do when we were younger as kids. It's like, she used to check our report cards, and she would base what our grade was, and she would give us a certain amount for each grade. Like, she went up more with each, like, if we got an A, we got a higher amount. If we got a B, then we get less, or depending on. And it was different for what grade we were in, too.
Yeah, and that's not that's not equality, because if they're talking about status, then why not give, say, 18-year-olds, just give them a house, give them the same amount of pay, regardless of them actually working for it. It just give it to them. That's it. That's equal. You're starting from the same spot. Everyone's starting from the same spot.
Right, just like the minimum wage, like pushing it up.
Yes, and that's a whole other issue that's derived from that. However, you're talking about that. It's like, in concept, in theory, it's great. However, practically, in practical terms, it is not. It doesn't work. Okay, it really doesn't work, because there are so many more factors that play into this that shows it doesn't work, and history has shown communism does not work.
Aren't there articles and research papers about it?
There's a ton of stuff that's out on there. And people might say, oh, but communist China is still there, it's still communist. I'm like, dude, and how many people are being oppressed from that? How much of the information is being on there? Yeah, the China swabs. Oh,
I'm sorry, I've been stuck on that for the last
equal
couple
treatment.
days.
Yeah, you don't get equal treatment. China is swabbing people's behinds. With 3 was it I almost said 3 foot, 3 inches, 3 inches in the wazoo.
Surprise swab test.
Surprise swab test. Which anyway. All right, so I don't agree with this, because it does get muddled up, especially with this. Again, it starts out great. Their intentions were great. The execution of this, not necessarily so much. Like I said, we must give them these things. So then and it only works. Equality only works if everyone starts from the same place and has the same and needs the same things. That is absolutely impractical. That's not true. Somebody who is in the agriculture industry does not need the same things as somebody in the film industry. Like, dude, it's not even the same.
Well, even being paid, talking about the stimulus check, I forgot where I heard it. It's like somebody who was working, a minimum wage job, getting $1,000, and a person who was working say a project manager, they're getting $1,000. It's not equal. They can't pay they can't really pay their rent with that when they have a different lifestyle, right?
Absolutely, and I
forgot where I heard that from.
Yeah, well, that's part of the whole idea of everyone needs the same things. No, people living in the city versus people living out in rural areas do not need the same things. People with kids, without kids. Like I said, there's too many factors to try to go. We all need the exact same thing with certain aspects of life. Okay, which is why. Okay, if you don't know, capitalism is actually called advanced ethical egoism. That's what it means. It means you work for your money, and you what you get from your work, you get to choose what you do with your money. That's what that means. You do the work, you get paid, however you get paid, and you get to decide for yourself what you want to do with that. Ergo, advanced ethical egoism is the most ethical form of egoism out there, and it evolved from bartering. Why I don't hear it as often today, but not too long ago, people used to be like, "Oh, we need to go back to the barter system." I was like, "Do you realize that, money is the most ethical way to barter? Like that's why it was created, was to barter, because it gave a third party ground for people to say, hey, your 10 apples can equal my 2 shoes or something like that. Like things that were not equal gave it an equal ground. That was the basis of it. Now it has been perverted over the years, but that is the basis of it. That's why it came to be. All right. Anyway, kind of going back to this whole thing, like it only works if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same things. Like that right there is absolutely incorrect. Again, this is why I talk about there's three sides to every action: your intention, the actual action itself, and the outcome. Okay, and neglecting any one of those three can screw it up. So you have to have the right intention. You have to have an action that is based off of that intention, and then you also have to take in the consequences for it. So you're talking about, say, raising, or we're talking about raising the minimum wage. Okay, what does that mean? Well, what about that? That's going to possibly take down, because not everyone can afford, or excuse me, not everyone needs a $15 an hour wage. In fact, somebody living out in, oh, I almost swore. Someone living out in like the rural areas, right, is not going to be, their monetary needs are not going to be the same as somebody living, say, Los Angeles or New York City or even San Francisco, right? They're not the same.
Well, how will those small businesses be able to afford to pay their, employees?
That's the other thing too, because there's no gradual thing. That's why the idea of inflation, right? Why it's important, why we talk about that. It's like, look, I think there was a study that says, if you hike up the minimum wage to $15 an hour, just across the board, not based off of regional area or state, okay, you are literally pushing to say, hey, the study said like we will increase the pay of like 900,000 people in the U.S. However, at the same time, the calculations were based on how much money is going in there and just business in general. What was it, like 1.7 million people? Or was it billion? I don't think it was billion. I want to say million. Will lose their jobs. So you're enhancing the life of, say, 900,000 people, but almost double that are going to lose their jobs. Why? Because of cut hours. Because and there's studies to show this. This is a real thing that happens. Anyways, I know we're getting too far up into the fun.
I think about, like, because economics, right? Mm-hmm. Where people are like, oh, why is it more expensive here than over here, like in the outskirts, like a smaller city? And I was like, well, because more money there's more business here, right?
There's more stuff here.
There's more stuff. People are buying things, so the price goes up. The taxes are priced differently here, percentage-wise, than it is, say, somewhere like in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yep, parcel tax, sales tax, all these sort of things, because there's more people. It's more people here. There's more projects and buildings and things to take care of.
Right, and I feel like, well, a lot of people that I've encountered, don't really know that, and so trying to inform them about that, they think it's unfair. But economically, right, if we're in a higher paying, like if we're in a really well-off city, then the minimum wage is going to go up, right? But then so does everything else. Yeah,
absolutely. And that, again, how do you pay for that as a business? If anybody's never owned a business, that's part of the problem. You understand, like, there's a lot more to it. And what's weird is listening to a lot of these people talk about, how they want the $15 wages and stuff like that. It's like, I almost guarantee you none of them own businesses. Because if you have workers that you're paying, employees, you got to think too, they pay half your insurance if they offer you insurance, right? For one. Two, they also get taxed the companies get taxed as individuals. And I know that does depend on, that is, they get taxed separately for the most part from the people that actually own it, which is why a lot of people like to put all their assets into companies and corporations, right, is because they get taxed separately than the individual. All right, and like I said, there's so many of these other factors that are involved that people just they don't think about, or they send out to the uneducated. Yeah, they just don't know, to the uneducated public, or people that just want to turn a blind eye to it. They don't want to look at it from an equal board. They just want to see it from no, that sounds great. No, that's what we need to do it, because screw the rich, screw the elites. Yeah, we all need to be on equal ground. It's like yes and no. Again, there's certain things that come from that, and this is not an advocacy for all the elitists and all the BS moves that they do. I'm not an advocate for that whatsoever. And there are certain things that I do feel that need to drop them down a peg. But that's for a different thing. All right, so I know this is very off topic from what we're talking about, but it is still kind of the same thing. All right, why this is important again. So in December, there was this study by Anita Hill talking about the Hollywood Commission. So the Hollywood Commission issues final report and lots of recommendations to eliminate bias and sexual harassment. So I brought this one up because it does talk about sexual harassment, but it does also talk about diversity and how some of the conclusions. So I'm going to actually skip a lot of this because there's certain parts that I want to do. You can read the report. It is out there. I've already read it. It's for the most part it's all right, but there's again it has to do with interpretation of data and conclusions. The conclusions that they're pushing aren't always sound or fair, I guess you can say. So here he goes. The final report found that despite perceived progress, the entertainment industry has a permissive climate toward sexual harassment. Workers don't believe powerful harassers will be held accountable, or that their reports will be taken seriously, and they will view reporting as risky. So again, this is the sexual harassment part. Despite widespread anti-discrimination statements and policies, gender diversity targets, and unconscious bias training, most workers don't think the industry values diversity, inclusion, or respect. These perceptions and findings were largely consistent across all areas of work, with those working in corporate settings having a dimmer view of these values than those working in television and film. Okay? So despite awareness of unacceptable workplace behaviors, workers reported disappointingly high rates of bias, bullying, and sexual harassment. Few reported these behaviors to the employer. Many experienced retaliation, but there are signs of progress in the entertainment industry as well, the report found. Since the #MeToo, workers in our sample saw moderate and much progress in preventing harassment, 69%, and in welcoming and valuing diverse backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, 68%. I want to just skip down. I'm trying to find the dang. Here we go.
It's a long article.
It is a pretty long article, and this was back in December, and which is why I was like, I want to read the study, because I like to look at primary sources. I don't just like to take things for, at face value. I like to delve into them. So the path forward section of the report offers 5 general recommendations. And the recommendations, I'm not going to go over all this stuff. Affirm a commitment to respect human dignity and inclusion. Inclusion culture starts with... it's just missing I think it's missing a period. Culture starts with with shared values.
What did you...
I don't know. One, affirm a commitment to respect human dignity and inclusion culture starts with shared values. That's so weird how they put that. Okay, Deadline, get with it. And the industry workers want to inhabit environments that put a premium on respect, human dignity, and inclusion. So, actual equity and equality. Fantastic. All for that. This must include a commitment to the principle that all employees deserve to be respected regardless of personal characteristics like race, religion, national origin, sex, or gender identity. I like how they separated the two. Sexual orientation, age, or disability. The one caveat I wish they added on there was, or political affiliation. Because they massively, and we've seen it so many dang times, like, it's like, oh, don't discriminate on these things, but political party, yeah, discriminate the hell out of them. And they do. And even regardless of this, like we've mentioned this before, a lot of the postings, the job postings, were openly discriminative towards LGBT, or not discriminative towards them, but they are only looking for LGBT or people of color or women, all the minorities, right? I know this is kind of aside from the whole, what we're talking about is there racism in in the film industry, but I guarantee you we are circling back to it. There are reasons for this, and it goes right here to talk about this: embrace diversity. Diversity and inclusion in both storytelling and entertainment corporate structures are essential to an industry that prides itself on innovation and creativity and takes seriously its role as a global influencer. Organizational systems that reflect the value and support diversity and inclusion are more creative, better at problem solving, more capable and responding to the demands of today's entertainment consumers, and more successful at preventing sexual harassment. So they're just saying, like, the more diverse your groups are, the more creative they are, right? The more successful they can be, which I agree with. There are studies that show that, all right? Where do we leave off? Representation alone does not ensure inclusion. Underrepresented groups often feel marginalized at work by an environment that doesn't value them, lacks interest or empathy, and fails to make change. The real aim should be for leaders to create culture that values, rewards, and supports individual differences. Okay, so all sounds fantastic, right? Here's where I take issue and why I go to primary sources, right? I've looked and read their study, and this was from Deadline, as you can see. I'm actually going to post this because I did post this up on here with a picture. This was their sample size. The demographic profile of our sample: male 42%, female 57%. I'm not going to read the other ones. Race, ethnicity, and origin. Just those first two right there. 82% white. 7% black, American Indian or Alaska Native 1%, Southeast Asian Pacific Islander 5%, bi or multiracial 2%, right? And the rest of them on there too.
How is that diverse?
So you're literally talking to 80%. 80%. Now, granted, they do have more women in here than men that are speaking out on here, but
it's pretty half.
Where's your diversity, right? And this has been the problem for things like this article here, which is why we're circling all the way back around towards what we're talking about. Is there racism in the film industry? So this came out 2 days ago. What BAFTA, DGA, and PGA nominations mean for Oscars. Are they a sign of the pandemic or real change for the industry and awards? Now remember that Anita Hill's study came out in December. Alright? When the American Film Institute released their AFI Top 10 Films of the Year list last month, 5 of the top 10 were movies with black themes and almost exclusively black casts. A breakthrough for diversity in the black filmmaking community, on par with nothing else I can remember when it comes to year-end awards recognition. Those films were Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, George C. Wolfe's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Regina King's One Night in Miami, Shaka King's Judas and the Black Messiah, and Disney/Pixar's animated Soul. Granted, those are all fantastic movies, okay? Here's where definitions get a little muddled. What's diversity? What does it mean to be diverse? It's a state of being diverse. What is diversity? And in case you forgot, and this is where I take issue for this. Diversity. Showing a great deal of variety. Variety. Very different. Very different. Including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different gender, sexual orientations, etc., including race. They don't want to put that in there, but that's fine. But that's literally what it means. Are they truly diverse? No. They are minorities, yes. That's the wrong one. They are definitely minorities. But they're not diverse if they're almost exclusively one race. That's not diversity, dude. That really is not. And why that is part of it, it's like... And then again, this is coming from somebody who is a minority of a minority group. Okay, you already saw from my mine here, multiracial 2%, or South East Asian, Pacific Islander, 5%. I'm a minority of the minority group.
Depends on how much transgender has.
Actually, it's funny because Pacific Islander and Asian almost reached it, but I don't know. Like, Pacific Islander is actually much lower than that. Multiracial for sure. Still a minority of a minority group. Okay? Again, this is my perspective, just because I know what I've experienced. But I've seen when people attack, the powerful white man, right? But then they're only pushing for their own people and ethnic groups. That's not being treated equal. That's not real equality. That's not real equity when you're trying to block out everybody else except for your own group, and you're only sticking to your one group. If you're really fighting against racism, where you don't want this whole separation from like whites dominating, right? Even though it's 60 to 70% of the United States is white, all right? Then why are a lot of these companies making purely just black films? And again, there's nothing against it. These films are great, and they deserve the awards that they're getting. They deserve the recognition.
I think you can have them, but you don't have to. But you're not really considered diverse at that point.
Yeah, and that's where the connotative change, the connotative definition, muddles it all up, and where it just doesn't make any sense to me. Because again, I'm not part of that. So where's the diversity? You almost exclusive. It even says it right there. Almost exclusively black cast. All right, I'm going to continue on this article because there's a couple other things. Again, this came out just 2 days ago. So it says it looked, at least in terms of diversity for the black community, that this would be a landmark year, which is fantastic. And it may still be with an Oscar nomination not due until Monday. And 3 of those films making the list of 10 Best Picture contenders on the Producers Guild list released yesterday, a usually reliable source for awards pundits. So, this is where it gets hairy. However, with 2 other passkey indicators of sentiment among Oscar voters, BAFTA and DGA, releasing their nominees this morning, so this was two days ago, their respective 5 nominees for the year's best in their top categories included not a single one of those black-themed films in a year full of rich possibilities. For the DGA, the big advances towards diversity did include Beijing-born Chloe Zhao continuing her award season route with Nomadland, which won for, I think it was Best Picture at the Golden Globes. In contention against Britain's actress-turned-director Emerald Fennell, for Promising Young Woman on DGA's list for Outstanding Directorial Achievement. The first time 2 women have appeared simultaneously on the DGA list. They will compete with Manx David Fincher, the only director previously nominated, The Trial of Chicago 7's Aaron Sorkin, and Colorado-born Korean-American Lee Isaac Chung's Minari. So all of those films have been in talk. People have been in talks all over the place since last year. All of them. Every single one of them. Including the ones from PGA. So there's a whole slew of films out there that are being considered. Why was it that it has to be highlighted about race and or gender or sex? I see, even I used it. Race or your sex. Like, this is why film awards. I think we had that one talk, right? Film awards and wokeness, right? And why it's so infuriating for just normal people or just like us. Why watching this whole social justice warrior type style of attacking anything and everything that doesn't include either black women or LGBT, I'm none of those. So I just don't count because I'm a dude and I'm multi-race. Where do I fit into all that? This is why I like saying like my perspective is a little bit more unique, because I don't fit into any of that, and I don't typically see things in black and white. I really don't care about skin color. You go look into the science of it, it's literally like levels of melanin in your frickin' skin. That's all it is. Regional differences. If you don't want to discriminate against regional differences from people from different places, then don't discriminate against skin color. Just plain and simple. I don't understand why that's an issue. You know, same thing goes for men and women, right? Or hermaphrodites, if you want to include, just to add, to be all well-rounded with that, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. So here this article says it also reinforced what are generally considered the front-running films, so no shockers here. In the relatively new first-time feature filmmaking category, the DGA did recognize Regina King's first helming effort, One Night in Miami, and Rada Blank's The 40-Year-Old Version, Version, to join the guys. Sound of Metal's Darius Moreau, let's just listing people there. So considering its route on the critics circuit, you would have to consider Zhao the frontrunner at this point. So yeah, for Nomadland, it won at the Golden Globes. I think it won. Did it win at the People's Choice? I forget.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, again, this is how much we don't care about award ceremonies. It's all just, I'm not gonna say it.
I care more about the work.
Circle
like
around
art,
each other.
You know?
Yeah. And that kind of brings me back to a different article, which I'll bring up later. I'm not going to bring it up on here, but we'll talk about it briefly. Where is it? Definitely the one to beat here, which is Nomadland, to become only the second woman ever to win at DGA, or the Oscars for that matter, since Catherine Bigelow became the first and only for The Hurt Locker in 2010. Obviously, the Hollywood guilds are key indicators of real Oscar momentum, and with a PGA nomination for Nomadland yesterday, and leading 7 nods at BAFTA today, Searchlight's film is right on target to knock out the competition. That's like the one that they need to beat. Okay, again, just going back to this thing, equality, right? State of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. Everybody has that opportunity to do it. How you execute it, what actions you take when you are given, say, $1 million budget or a $15 million budget, and how you execute that, who you bring in your team, will determine also like how well you can be received for these things. Like I said, all the films they mentioned in that article were good films. They've had a lot of fantastic reviews. They've been winning awards. But are they the best ones? And this brings me back to an article that I read. I think the last thing I'm going to throw up on here is diversity, because again, diversity, the state of being diverse, showing a great deal of variety, very different. I am diverse in my background. I used to say my ancestors got it on with everyone. That's how one. Or they were pillaged, and other things happened to them. Regardless, that's who I am. That is absolutely who I am. But there was an article that I did come across. I'm not going to read it, and I didn't want to put it up because it was ridiculous. It was an opinion piece, and it had to do with Joaquin Phoenix and how when he went up to receive his award at the BAFTA, he gave his speech where he wanted to point out racism in the film industry, which again is fantastic. But the article, in which a lot of people are also putting out, that this is why what they're talking about is the stance that the writer was taking was that we need to stop doing period drama pieces, because they reinforce old racism stereotypes, and are not inclusive to the black community. I think it was specifically talking about the black community, and it's like, So Joaquin Phoenix's speech was talking about like, we need to stop doing that. We need to be more inclusive and everything like that. But it's like, you do have films like that, and it's when he came out with Joker. That's when it was. So just to be clear, it's when he was receiving awards for Joker, and I think it was that year, 1917, which is a period piece, war drama, won, and it beat it. And I don't know if you've watched, because we've watched Joker and 1917, and if you have watched Joker was good, okay, we really enjoyed it. 1917 was way better, and not because it was full of white people.
That is not the reason.
Like
The actual art, the actual like story, the people working behind it, you know, shots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Story, characters, acting.
So yeah, if you don't know, 1917, it was shot as a faux oneer, meaning they didn't have any cuts that you can see. They did have cuts; they had to, right? Just it was filmed as if it was one person following one person through almost all. And of course, there were certain parts of that did cut, like the protagonist blacked out or something like that, and then they picked up again, or something, or fell asleep or something like that, right? But for the most part, it was all just one shot, and that's the way they want to do it. It's kind of like what was the Michael Keaton Birdman? Yeah, kind of like Birdman, but in a war, you know, in World War II version of it, beautifully shot. Okay, this article even went to go, well, the BBC, you know, I'm like, you're talking about Europe, dude. You're talking about, you know, these period pieces are just racist. I'm like, dude, have you never seen Roots? Like, come on, man. There are other things, and I've mentioned this before too.
Yeah,
and I've mentioned this before. Just like Black Panther, okay, not a period piece. Justified to having a majority of it, almost all exclusively a black cast. Fantastic, dude.
That was a good film too.
Yeah, that was a great film. I love Black Panther because those demographics played to the story. These black films that they mentioned and how they're trying to highlight them, those are based in the black community. However, those do not equal diversity. They do not mean they are diverse just because they're using a minority. The biggest minority group in the United States, no less. Okay, that's not how that works. All right. So to answer that question with, is there racism in the film industry? Well, you can say that there is on many, many different levels, and not just coming from the white overlords, you know, the business owners that are in it. Because again, we've seen it on the lower levels, even where people are discriminating against people that are not women, that are not people of color, that are not LGBT, and it was the people of color are the ones that are, like I said, if you don't fall into any of those, right, you're discriminated against. And I still feel that you need to include political affiliation, political party, or whatever, because that's still discrimination. You're still discriminating against some sort of demographic that's out there. If you're not supposed to, let's put it this way, and I know they're two different things. If you're not supposed to discriminate against religion, someone's religious beliefs, then why are you allowed to, because that's an ideology, why are you allowed to discriminate against political party? I say if you're there to work, especially in the creative aspects of film, keep the damn politics out of your workplace. Plain and simple. Go and do your jobs. Create art. That's what you're there for.
I always thought that was best, and I remember when I first heard that, somebody was like, well, I don't want to bring that into the film, you know, at least while we're filming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then he went, right after he was done filming, he went and brought it up, and I was like,
yeah,
dude.
it's ridiculous how people, again,
it's not your work.
It's, again, intention. What was the intention? What was the action, right, that they took? And then what was the consequence, right? What happened to that, the outcome? Okay, you have to take all those three into account. And I know we've talked about this before too, when people are like, that's not what I meant, or I didn't mean to do that. It's like, that's your intention, but what was your action, what was the outcome? Okay, all three of those, you know, tie into each other of what you need to actually think about and take into account. And when you're not seeing it because you're only looking at yourself, again, this whole idea of equity versus equality, right? There should be, you know, our system should be based off of equity, being fair and just across the board. Fair and just does not mean I have to give every single person the same amount as I think we talked about this too. The differences of pay between a producer and, which is above the line, and below the line crew is massive. And a lot of people in below the line, when you're on set, complain about, oh, this fool coming on set, he doesn't even come on set, he's got his own office, why does he get paid more than we do? Well, producers, for one, start from a project from development. If not from development, they acquire it and start pre-production, and can take a year or longer of their life producing said project. Whereas people below the
with
line,
no pay.
huh?
With no pay.
With no pay sometimes, Whereas below the line, who they are ensuring you do get paid, are there for, say, a month. And of course, this does not include like animations where the animators have to be there for years. Those are much longer. And imagine that, trying to develop that without pay or nominal pay, trying to get people to pay you so you can pay others for that. Again, a lot of these people complaining about these things have never actually owned a business or operated one or never been on that side to actually understand it. Okay? And even still, there's still a lot of producers, especially indie producers, who are like, maybe not indie producers, because indie producers do hold a lot of hats, but a lot of these producers who are like, oh, I don't deal anything with the money. That's my line producer and my EP. They deal with all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. But again, like, it's just perspective. A lot of this is perspective, and again, this whole thing with race and sex and gender and even political affiliation. It's all just my perspective on it. You're going to have a different one. You're going to have your own. So, like I said, those things with the award ceremonies and everything, it's like, it's a little bit infuriating because they're trying to push saying like, oh, you don't have any black members in your guilds. Well, I don't know what the guild requirements are. Is it invitation only? If it's invitation only, then yeah, there's a problem. Are there other minorities in that group? Okay. Have people in the black film community reached out to become members? There's all these other
factors.
Yeah, there's all these other factors involved that it's like, I can't tell, but when you read these headlines from the news, whether it be from Hollywood Reporter or Deadline or all these other ones they're specific about it, and it's very, very woke, right? I'm always questioning, well, what is the other side? What's the equal ground? What is actual equal? Because if you only hear one side of an argument, you are not being equal. You're not being equitable. You are only taking one side. If you don't hear another side and try to take that into account. And again, this is also completely aside from the fact of people coming up with their own misguided conclusions without actual facts or based off of their opinion alone. And two, like, if they're not just lying.
But is it just complaining to complain?
It can be.
But not doing anything about it or researching about it, like how to be a part of that?
Yeah. I bring it back to that kid, like I said, who was out here standing in front of in my driveway, not even on the sidewalk, on his phone for like 15, 20 minutes, on his phone, talking to somebody, and we got called because, people here knew that he was out there, and it was during the time when people were knocking on doors dressed as, community workers, and when nobody answered, they called their buddies and go break into houses. I remember this. So I'm like, nope, is this one of the guys? I don't know. So we took his picture, and took his picture, and he's like, don't take my picture, man. He already flipped his ID badge around, because he's supposedly fundraising, And we're like, well, don't stand in my driveway for 15, 20 minutes. And he tried to go, well, you're racist. I'm like, how am I racist? You're racist against Mexicans. And I'm like, dude, I am part Spanish. I work at a Mexican high school. Like, don't give me this crap. You know nothing about me. And his response was, well, yeah, you're not full blood. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that right there is straight. That's literally racism. That is a projection of racism from it. So again, this is nothing against, like, say, the black community or their films or anything like that, because I know we've talked a lot about that. It's also nothing against the white community and the white filmmakers that are out there. You do period pieces, fantastic. They're beautifully made for those war movies, right? 1917 was a beautiful film, man. Joker was a beautiful film. One was psychological and more dealt with that, and the other one was just the art of filmmaking to make it wonder like that for a film that's high in action with war. And to coordinate all that, like, dude, that's to be commended, right? That goes back to the art, and it's also completely separate from what we've talked about before. Whereas the art still can be separate from the artist, how many actors are, or directors and producers and filmmakers are not that swell of people in real life, but act phenomenally. Their art is separate from themselves.
Michael Bay.
Not just Michael Bay. Like, there's a whole list.
That was the first one that came up.
There's a whole list of people that are like that. But that's where Marvel tried to, by contract for their superheroes, fake it and confuse everyone to where it must be that you must appear to have the same values in your regular life out in public. This is literally in their contracts. For the character of your superhero. So you must uphold some sort of public relations. It's a persona, a public persona, that you are as great and as altruistic and a hero in the community.
This is not Disneyland.
Yeah.
Because in Disneyland they have actors, right, that portray these characters, and they go around walking that all day. But that's inside their theme park. That's their little niche, that's what sells there.
Yeah,
if actors who aren't there, they do their job, they get it done, they should be able to go return to who they are, right? Yep. They have their own lives, they have their own thoughts, you know.
But now they're controlling them for that, and again, that's why people like Chris Pratt or Gina Carano get in trouble for being themselves. I'm like, come on, man, are you serious? That's dumb. That's literally mixing fiction and reality to try to appeal to audiences who they're literally undermining audience members, thinking that we're all dumb enough to go, oh yeah. And to be honest, after all these past 4 years of political strife, and opposition against each other, because who was actually speaking out against a lot of that? Celebrities, right? Saying absolutely dumb things. Well, I've thought an awful lot about blowing up, the whatchamacallit. That was Madonna saying that crap. Or even Depp saying, like, when was the last time an actor killed the president? I'm like, dude, you guys are literally advocating for violence. I thought a lot about that, but, it's like, no, don't even give, I'm not going to get myself started. I'm not going to get myself started on all the political stuff, but it's like, it's when it's backed by tons of the celebrities coming out and speaking like that, and you're using their characters. I think, I forget who mentioned, they were like, oh yeah, Chris Evans and Mark Ruffalo, like, love them for their art. They play fantastic characters, but their politics suck. They don't agree with them. So what? They can separate the art and the artist, right? And
what was that, Gina Carano and, what's his name?
Pedro Pascal?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they respected each other. As being, not just being on the same film, or the same series, but they respected each other as just passionate people from opposite sides. And so far, they didn't have, at least Gina Carano didn't have anything bad to say about him. So what? They disagree. But again, going much further into, beyond politics, it starts going into, like, say, critical race theory, right? When you're talking about your race, how far is it, can you say, do you point it out to where you actually become a racist yourself? Or it's not maybe a projection? Where you don't say dumb things like that kid, well, you're not a full-blooded Mexican. I'm like, dude, get out.
I think it's always been around, though, right?
Possibly. And when you talk about systemic racism, which was a big buzzword from last year, right? That means it's been in the system for a much longer time than, say, what Trump was in office. And I know people like, they get, that's a buzz trigger word for them, like Trump, like whatever, man. But that's a fact. If you truly believe it was systemic, that means it existed before his time, right? And then all these people, when people get, duped into voting for Biden on this stuff, like, dude, that dude's been in politics for like 40, 50 years. All these things, he's like, oh, now I'm going to make changes. Dude, he was saying that throughout all of his stuff, all of his time in politics. Why didn't he do it then? Why didn't he do it when he was VP? Don't give me that. Like, people can lie. That's part. Guess what? Guess who lies the best? Actors. Like, that's a big thing. However, when they start pushing these inequitable policies or woke ideas in that sort of sense, where it's like, now we're going to just openly discriminate against some sort of race or sex or, sexual orientation or whatever. That's wrong. That's literally inequity. That's not what equity is meant to be. That is not what equality is meant to be. Like, so is there racism? Yes. Is there sexism? Yes. I think that was my thesis, was sexism in film, specifically. That's why I talk a lot about that stuff, because I did a lot of research for that, and I forget. I forget how long that report was, but I enjoyed the research because I like researching stuff. But when you're talking about racism and you're talking about equity and equality, it's like they're very close to each other, but it is not about what they give to everybody. What is the equality? Well, the opportunities, equal opportunities that are out there. It should all be based on merit. When you don't base it on merit on an individual, that's like saying, hey, you have a strong worker who has the experience, who is transferring or maybe got laid off from say the lockdowns, now applying for a job, who might be a white male who has 15 years of experience, versus a person of color who's LGBT, or say is a woman, or is a woman, Wimixin, whatever the heck is that stupid thing they're trying to push, who has zero experience in what they're doing. But to be diverse, you give it to this person, the Wimixin, because you want to be diverse and inclusive. That is not on merit. That is not, they may have the equal opportunity for that because they were both, that opportunity there to apply to that job, to take that route, was there. Okay? But the unequal and inequitable choice that has been made is what California was trying to repeal when it wanted to amend the California Constitution in this last election, for it to say, oh, we want to bring back, what was it called? It's not critical race theory. It was bring back affirmative action. Let's give them these things. This is why reparations, when people talk about reparations, things that didn't affect you, that affected generations before, and yet there's still massively successful people out there who made it in those ethnicities and nationalities, in those races, regardless of it. So those opportunities are there. When you have actual rights being infringed, yes, that needs to be addressed. Yes, that needs to go to our lawmakers. But when you get things like, again, they literally try to repeal. I'm trying to remember it specifically because that was a big one. The California tried to repeal that in the California Constitution, where they wanted to eliminate, we cannot discriminate against race and sex and sexual. They literally wanted to take that out. That is literal legislation to say, hey, we are being equitable and equal across the board. Nope, we want to take that out. Like, isn't that what our biggest thing was supposed to be? Like, for California being the forefront of liberty, of these ideas of actual inclusion. When, in the 90s, like I said, I remember it was on the news. The minorities are now the majority of the state. Fantastic. And yet, still, systemic racism exists here in the most minority state. Okay? Yeah. Anyways, I know that's our hour that we got here. Thanks for joining us on here. And again, this is such a big issue that we wanted to bring just our own perspectives on it. I know I talk a lot. There's a lot I gotta say, but I wanted to bring this up because awards, not just awards ceremonies, but just the film industry in general, it's something that we see all the time. This is why we don't typically write races into our scripts and our stories, because to us.
I never think about that stuff when I'm writing. I'm just writing the story,
the
character.
Yeah, and same thing with for the most part, sex, right? Which sex are we going to use? And we do have discussions about that. We do include it for certain reasons. But again, people are like, you should make that a woman. I'm like, no, I'm gonna make it whoever the hell I want to, because it's my story. So what? I do have a variety of women and men as protagonists in my story, doing different things all the time. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because it matters more about their character. That's what it's supposed to be. It matters more about the art, like what you're talking about. Anyway, so it is 1 o'clock. Again, thanks again for joining us.
If you guys want to support us, you guys can sign up through, what is it, Patreon?
Patreon.com/HideHooliganFilms, I believe it is. It's in a while since I've been on that.
More exclusive stuff on there.
Yeah.
We're going to be dropping more. And then also, not these t-shirts, but we had t-shirts previously that JJ wore. And you can buy them on thewanderingkiltsman.com. And
/shop. Yep.
/shop. You guys can check that out.
It's our RPG IRL.
There is still a sale going on right now for the St. Patrick's Day stuff.
St. Patrick's Day sale, yeah. There's 2 shirts up there, which are on sale, limited edition stuff. So they will not be there for long after St. Patty's Day. So get them before they're gone, because they won't be there. But there is a sale that is going on for that for sure. So yeah, and also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this. Thanks again for joining us on here. And we want to, again, attack these problems and these issues that are real issues that are out there, but from our own perspectives. Again, you could agree or disagree. It's totally up to you. You know, we try not to keep it we try to keep toxicity out of everything, you know, and just try to be equitable and equal on many, many grounds. So again, thanks a lot, guys, for joining us. We'll see you later. Have a great one.
Bye.